This was the lavender romance ball that cost $250 American dollars in this economy to attend. But I can't say there was no decorations. And y'all know I'm not about to get on this internet and tell lies. So here's the decor for the ball. These rose petals weren't even silk. They were styrofoam of the highest quality. And despite the fact that the event started at 7 p.m., of course it didn't even start on time. The doors were still locked until about like 7:15-ish. There was no food. There was a small table with just desserts. And as a pregnant lady who ate cheesecake for dinner that evening, I went in the mood for desserts. So I was thinking if there were like crackers, a box of Cheez-Its for us to fight over like raccoons, something. No, there was nothing else there. But there was a bar, a cash bar. You paid $250 for a ticket to access a cash bar for a $10 tiny little cup of wine.
Welcome back to Event Lemons. In today's video, let's take a look at what happens when event planning stops being ambitious and maybe the word is aspirational and starts to completely break down. Be sure you stick around until the end because what happened to these authors is the poster child of why it's imperative to know the business side of events way before you jump out there to organize one. It takes a lot of know-how to do this. Unfortunately, there were tons of victims and a trail of lies that led me to ask the question, what made this planner think they were capable of pulling this off in the first place? Let's get to it, and let's highlight some red flags and squeeze out the truth.
Because this story starts 18 months ago, because that's when we all put our deposits down. So I put down my $150 table fee back in February of 2024. I'm currently pregnant with twins. I planned my pregnancy around this event like a clown. I scheduled my uncle-in-law's funeral around this event. I even paid extra to sponsor this event. And let's get into that, shall we? Because you know I brought the receipts, girl. Peep the date. After Christmas of 2024, I reached out to Archer Fantasy Events to sponsor A Million Lives. And on January 20th, they received my $250. But after that email exchange, it's pretty much crickets. About 2 weeks before the event, I actually went on the event's website to see what I was actually, getting into. But I had not seen any advertising on behalf of the management company for this event. And I looked up a lot of these authors and a lot of them were brand new on the scene, fresh new indie authors. And the math was not mathing in my brain. And then I saw the only posts on Archer Fantasy Events socials were offering the tickets at 40% off. That's when I knew that ain't nobody was coming. That's when I knew. And said that she couldn't confirm bookings. And so she was instead moving all the featured authors to the Days Inn across the street. Y'all look at this. There are freaking scratch marks on this bed, bro. This place did not have a wheelchair ramp. And so my expectations are getting lower and lower and lower. The bar was on the floor, but it went to hell real fast.
Whoa. Did she say she planned her pregnancy and a funeral around this event? Wow. Yeah, she was really committed. That's outstanding. Unfortunately, the event didn't deliver for her. There's so many red flags in this segment. Let's try and quickly go over them. Red flag number 1, the communication breakdown after she made her initial payment. Yeah, that's a no-go. Proper organizers would never do that. They keep the authors and the vendors updated throughout the progression of the event just so people would know what's going on. Red flag number 2, no advertising. I literally just responded to a Reddit post where another organizer, not this one per se, but another organizer was struggling to get people to purchase tickets to their event. And I replied, literally, marketing is always something that planners put off when it's literally the most important part of the event. You have to convince people to part ways with their money and buy tickets to your event. You should be doing this way sooner than the last minute. Red flag number 3, the only advertising she saw was a 40% discount off ticket prices. Yeah, enough said on that one. Red flag number 4, lodging changes. So I think for me, I'm starting to see a pattern, and I'm hoping you are too, of how this slowly began to break down and fall apart. Lodging changes at the last minute are indicative of one of two, if not both, financial collapse and poor timeline management. But either way, it's not good. It's no good news for these authors and vendors of this festival.
This was the Lavender Romance Ball that cost $250 American dollars in this economy to attend. But I can't say there was no decorations. And y'all know I'm not about to get on this internet and tell lies. So here's the decor for the ball. These rose petals weren't even silk. They were styrofoam of the highest quality. And these books were placed around on the table as decorations and as party favors. Allegedly, these were the books that were purchased through the bookstore partner that were supposed to be in the swag bags. You know, the books from the bookstore partner that backed out at the last minute. Allegedly, these are the books, but I can't confirm. And despite the fact that the event started at 7 p.m., of course, it didn't even start on time. The doors were still locked until about like 7:15-ish. There was no food. There was a small table with just desserts. And as a pregnant lady who ate cheesecake for dinner that evening, I went in the mood for desserts. So I was thinking if there were like crackers, you know, a box of Cheez-Its for us to fight over like raccoons, something. No, there was nothing else there. But there was a bar, a cash bar. You paid $250 for a ticket to access a cash bar for a $10 tiny little cup of wine. The first hero of our finale is Speaker Steve. Here he is, everyone, the infamous Bluetooth speaker that provided all of our music for the ball. But don't give credit to the creator for Speaker Steve. This lovely security guard right here took pity on us and brought Speaker Steve from his home just so we could have some music at this ball. So yes, friends, that means the plan for this ball was for us to stand in this giant empty room with no food, a cash bar, and stand there in silence.
$250 a ticket? No, ma'am. No, that's a no for me, dog. No. Red flag number 5, no decorations. What was the $250 paying for if you're not getting at least some decor? I mean, come on. Red flag number 6, no food, no drinks. Again, what was the $250 paying for? You have no decorations, you have no food, you have drinks, but they're not free. You're having to pay for them because there's a cash bar. And then on top of all of that, there was no DJ, no music, nothing. The poor security guard shows up with his Alexa or Bluetooth speaker to at least give these attendees something to listen to. This is a very, very sad situation here. The tickets should have at least included food and beverage. My initial thoughts about this is that the organizer probably overcommitted. To say that they jumped out there and secured a convention center when I don't think this event needed that. From what I can tell, she previously had a successful event and wanted to scale from there. And that's perfectly fine. But you need to know how to properly scale. And I think she overcommitted. And then when ticket sales didn't come in, she was still obligated to whatever revenue the convention center was expecting from her. So then she scaled back on the food and beverage to try and minimize the hit to the finances. I'm pretty sure she probably lost a lot of money on this event and would have to pay for some of this out of her pocket. But that's just my guess based on my couple of decades in the industry. But let's listen to more and see how this pans out.
She said 400 tickets were sold in December, not even 24 hours before check-in. After I emailed multiple times, she responded to my email and said that I was moved to the Days Inn, which is fine. A free hotel is a free hotel, but it was a very big jump from this very pretty Hilton that was, I think it was even connected to the convention center, like very close to the convention center, to the Days Inn. And the Days Inn was across the street. You know, I said, whatever. I get there, and my table is given away. Again, I am a featured author, and my table was given away. It was a case of the map being a hot mess, and over the next 2 hours, maybe 15 people come in. By the end of the day, I would be gracious to say 40 people came in on Friday. It was not my crowd. There were not people there looking for Black and brown fantasy or queer fantasy. So I think it speaks to the type of environment that you set. You know, if you are another person of color or a queer person, you go where you think you will be comfortable. And I don't think that this was set up in a way where people of color or any marginalized people knew that they would be safe or what that they would, you know, have things that they're interested in. On Friday night, I was told that I needed to pay for my own hotel room. Because her card declined and her identity was stolen. I paid for my own hotel and was told I would be reimbursed. I was told that I would still get my appearance fee Sunday, which was yesterday, which I did not get. At the end of the day, I don't suggest the event. Everything that you've been seeing is true.
Now, this organizer knew they hadn't sold 400 tickets back in December. They hadn't sold 400 tickets, period. Why the lies? Obviously, this is red flag number 6. What they should have done instead was been honest with the vendors and the authors and let them know, hey, can you help promote and market this event to your audiences and your fans? Most people are more than happy to let people know, hey, I'm going to be at this show or this event or this festival. They love to share that with their audiences. But nope, that's not what happened. What we got instead were the same red flags, communication breakdowns, and yet again, another lodging change. Red flag number 7. This author was spot on by asking the organizer, hey, is this my tribe? Are these my people who are going to be at this show? Knowing that her content was extremely specific. And in true form, this organizer squandered an opportunity to tell the truth and lied and said, yeah, your audience is here, even though they knew this was not a match. To me, in my opinion, it feels very disrespectful and disregarding of this author by not creating an environment where she felt safe. That's a no-go. That is definitely a no-go. And then red flag number 8 and lie number 675, identity theft. Girl, come on. Just to get out of paying for lodging and speaker fees that you promised to pay for. Really? I do not blame this author one bit for saying that she doesn't endorse this event. I wasn't there and I don't even endorse this event.
I was an attendee at the A Million Lives. Paid about $60, $55, $60 for my ticket. It was a little unorganized before, like when we went to go in there, because we didn't know where it was. There was no signage, no balloons, no anything. The person that gave us our wristbands didn't even scan our tickets. Turns out she was Grace, the organizer. She looked frazzled as heck. And we walked in, no decoration, no nothing. And I told my friend, I'm like, where do we even start? Like, do we just go down this way? Do we go that way? Like, we didn't know where exactly like table 1 was, like if we wanted to go in order. It's just been madness. And then I see people on the damn internet blaming the damn authors, making it the author's problem when Grace was the problem. She didn't organize this properly. She didn't handle it properly. She bit off way more than she could chew. And once she noticed that she wasn't able to effectively pull this off, she should have asked for help instead of blaming everyone except herself. A lot of people didn't have all the information, and then the information that they did have was all lies. And instead of you guys coming to rally for these authors and support these authors and support these vendors, you guys are just playing the blame game. A lot of these authors were new, brand new. They didn't know this was their first event. They don't know how any of this works. They thought it was normal. And it wasn't. They were exploited. They were exploited.
This attendee gets something really, really important. I mean, events are incredibly difficult to execute well. Most people don't even realize what goes into making an event look seamless because they only see the finished product. And many times that's by design. I know for myself, I would insist that my team didn't show up until it was all done. They didn't need to know how the sausage gets made. Because when they were there, they would start trying to make changes on site and just create unnecessary chaos. But once this organizer realized that she was in over her skis and had bit off more than she could chew, she should have called in for backup, for help. There are literally event production companies and marketing agencies specifically there to help when things go sideways or haywire. My guess, as I mentioned before, is that she'd already overcommitted her budget by booking such a big venue that she did not need, this convention center. And then she couldn't afford the help when she really needed it, especially to fulfill the promises that she'd made to these first-time authors and vendors. And unfortunately, they were the victims in all of this.
Hold up. I don't know if that's going to fly with fire code. And guess what? This wasn't going to fly with fire code. So this was all completely different. The tables were indeed there. The tablecloths, however, were not. Y'all, there were maybe 30 people. And this was an all-day situation. But when they got to their panel, there were no chairs. Your talent was on the floor. Your paying attendees were on the floor.
Okay, let's sum this up. This festival is the prime example of what happens when an organizer's ambition overshadows their capabilities and their budget, period. Between the poor communication, the hotel downgrades, the lies, and then when they were confronted about it and things were falling apart, instead of giving some type of a solution, instead they gave more excuses and more lies. There was no accountability here. And what makes it more painful is the fact that new authors were targeted specifically, and they had no clue about what a proper event management could even look like. These authors, some of them were coming in from out of town. Someone even came in from out of the country. So they lost money on travel fees, shipping fees for shipping books that they never sold because no one really showed up. Childcare fees, lodging fees. I mean, the list goes on. But even more than that, they missed out on an opportunity for genuine connections for potential audience. Many of these authors were using this festival to launch their careers, and unfortunately, it fizzled out so quickly. I've seen discussions on event boards and craft fair boards where people were looking for some type of a tool or a repository to vet events, because just like some of the more familiar ones like the Fire Festival, people are getting scammed left and right between vendors, exhibitors, even attendees. There are scammers out there to take your money. So if you're aware of something like this that does exist, please, I invite you to note it down below in the comments. I'd love to look into it and share it out with the people I communicate with, as well as on my channel. It's needed if it does not exist, because it's very sad to know that people are taking advantage of others, desire to have face-to-face interaction. I mean, it's an awesome opportunity if done well. But I don't think that these authors were necessarily naive. I just think they were targeted by someone in their own community, because this organizer too was a writer herself. She'd earned their trust because she had this event in the past successfully. I just think that she scaled too fast. She scaled the wrong way and just jumped out there and bit off more than she could chew, as I mentioned before. I invite you to subscribe, like the video if you found it helpful or even entertaining. And I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.